I feel like if we don't even put a goal out there and we don't even try, psychologically, I feel like we would live a very empty life.
That's when I realized that I really couldn't align the professional to the personal.
If your goals hit your primary aim in life, if they're the real goals that you're pursuing, you will know that everything else is going to be a vehicle to help you accomplish that. Welcome to Career Compass, mapping your future. Visit yourcareerrevolution.com today to get your free guide on the benefits of working with a career ownership coach. Hello again, and welcome to Career Compass, the show dedicated to helping you map your future as you reimagine and reclaim the life of your dreams. If you guys have been listening, you know that this is episode 3 of a 10-episode season dedicated to the 10 steps to your ideal career. Our topic today, and I'm so excited, is to talk about defining your goals at this stage in your life. With me today, I have my wonderful co-host, Dr. Mike Smith, organizational psychologist, and he's here to help us explore the importance of goals. But before we do, and before I give Dr. Mike the opportunity to say hello, you guys have probably heard me say the statistic, and it's one that is imprinted on my brain because I just cannot believe that that is the current state of adults working in America, where 75% of the adult population is either loudly quitting or quietly quitting their jobs, which means as it relates to goals, there is something missing. So Dr. Mike, why don't you go ahead and say hello and let's dive into this.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you, listeners, and thank you, T, for your time and your introduction. And before we dive into this, I just want to say that this truly is one that's very near and dear to my heart, not only because I've studied it for years, right, in both my academic world as a leader in the military and corporate America, but I think just as, if not more important, I've lived it, right? Personal experience, a school of hard knocks. Luckily, I've had mentors along the way, which is why I'm so appreciative of what you all do, what you all offer, and the services and the hope that you provide. But what really kind of pushed me down this road and got me to realize the true importance of this was when I was at my corporate job in Berkshire Hathaway. My roles and responsibilities had kind of changed from what I was initially hired to do. It became more, I would say, administrative in nature. I shared this a little bit last time. So as the corporate safety guy, I was always out in the field, building relationships, getting to know the people, making sure they had all the resources, assets, and tools that they needed. And then my job started to shift more towards, hey, you're really good at what you do, but what we really need in the department more than anything right now are more procedures, more spreadsheets, more guidance, more training plans. And all that stuff is extremely important. And you know, with the business that you run, right? Those things are extremely important, but it wasn't really me. And until I got that little push to help me figure out what my personal goals were, like deeply rooted personal goals, what I truly wanted out of life, that's when I realized that I really couldn't align the professional to the personal, right? Which is so important. Any job you're in, once you know your goals, you can work on that alignment. But if you don't know them going into it, then you're just kind of stuck. But once I really uncovered my goals and I found that they couldn't align, then I made the leap into entrepreneurship. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it.
You're sticking to it. And as a matter of fact, thank you so much for just being so transparent. As I was thinking about our conversation last week and even talking about it today, sometimes we think the goal is the goal and then the goal is not the goal. What does that even mean? But like you were saying, you wanted this job. So you accomplished the goal, but then you realized the goal was not the goal. Do you want to comment on that a little bit?
Well, yeah, so that's a really good point. I know we'll discuss that deeper here in a few, but again, going after a goal, like there's different kinds of goals, right? There's a true personal you goal, which is really all it starts, right? Deep down inside, really, what is your goal? But if you're just stepping into purely a professional goal, right? I want to get to X position. I want to make X amount of money, right? Professional. And you hit that, then you're absolutely right. You will still find out that there's things missing, right? Sense of fulfillment, accomplishment, purpose, and the list goes on. So, those kind of tangible surface level goals, while they may be worthy, they are definitely not all encompassing.
And this is what I love about, like you said, what we have to offer, or just being able to use a mentor or a coach as a sounding board, because sometimes we think we know what we want. I mean, I'm thinking, it's close to graduation season. So there are lots of students trying to imagine what their future could be like. People thinking, what job do I want to have? What career can I pursue? Or even people who are in career transition right now thinking that, okay, do you know what? This job didn't check all the boxes. So, what other job could do that for them? And so, when we do some of our coaching, we talk about the fact, is it the job that you're looking for or what the job will do? As you think about your career, think about it this way too. Is it the career that you're after, right? This position in corporate America, that job that you had with one of the most prominent companies in the world, right? Or was it in alignment with the income, the lifestyle, the wealth and equity that you would like to have? Is that the goal? And the job or the career is just a vehicle to the goal. I think people sometimes confuse the two, thinking the job is the dream or the dream is the job, but sometimes it could just be a stepping stone towards it. The one example I love to use, and we've got that example in our book too, is who in their right mind has a goal to one day own a porter potty business, right? Excuse the pun, I've said it a million times before, but that sounds like a crappy way to pursue your goal, right? That sounds like a crappy business to be in. However, is it so crappy if it has the potential to meet your goal, your income goal? Maybe even exceed your income goal? Is it still so crappy if it has the potential to give you the flexibility and gives you the opportunity to have the freedom to create the life that you want to create?
Mhm.
Maybe it's worth considering. And longer term, what if this vehicle had the potential to create some wealth for you, or maybe even create a legacy for you and your family? Was it still that crappy? So it may be an extreme example, right? I'm not saying everybody should rush off and now become proprietors of a porta potty concept. However, if your goals hit your primary aim in life, if they're the real goals that you're pursuing, you will know that everything else is going to be a vehicle to help you accomplish that.
Yeah, 100%. And I think you're right. It's very, very easy for us to fall into the more comfortable path
Mhm.
of uncovering or discovering goals based on our upbringing, where we currently are in life, what other people tell us they think we're good at, without really taking that deeper introspective look at what we want truly, what would serve our needs, fulfill our purpose, our passion, our vision, right? So you're right. A lot of times we live a life by default and not a life by design. And there's a huge difference between the two. And what you all do is you provide the opportunity to live that life by design versus default.
Oh, I love it. Life by design with intent as opposed to reactive by default. As a matter of fact, this would maybe be a great time for people to bookmark careercompassshow.com. We've got a great assessment there to help you determine and think about your thinking and see whether your current career aligns with your long term goals. From a psychological perspective, Doc, why is it important to have goals?
So I think the very first thing that makes goals so important, and again, we're talking like true goals that you've thought through, you've dove into, you've explored, is it really gives you direction and motivation, right? It's just like, and I think we've talked about this analogy before, right? The GPS, right?
Yeah.
Your Garmin in your vehicle, it's an amazing navigation tool.
Mhm.
But if you don't put in a very clearly defined end goal or an end destination, it's just a cool looking map on your dashboard, right? It doesn't guide you, doesn't give you direction, doesn't tell you where the construction is, where the traffic speed cameras are. Like, it doesn't tell you any of that stuff, right? So again, direction and motivation. I think the second thing that goals do, especially when you properly define and map them out, is it allows you to accomplish those little small wins, right? When you look at just a big goal, you set it with no specifics, no structure, no true purpose. then it's easy to stay focused on that one big overarching, sometimes overwhelming goal, right? But when it's broken down into smaller steps where you can actually define that end game, reverse engineer it, figure out everything you must do to get there, then along the way, you start to build self-confidence, self-esteem, and it starts to pick you up, right? And give you that sense of, yeah, I can do this. Like, this is pretty awesome. Another thing that it does is it helps you. And this is one thing that I've wrestled with, for a long time earlier in my leadership days, is true goal setting, right? Discovering and defining allows you to focus on prioritization, right? It allows you to avoid the overwhelm. Because a lot of times what we do is when your goals are rooted in values versus priorities, it's easier to maintain, right? Because our values don't change, but priorities do. How many times have you walked into your office with a calendar all lined up and every single day it goes exactly like what's on your calendar?
Rarely.
Right. So priorities do change, but when they're rooted in values and your true goals and your purpose, then it allows you to stay flexible enough to continually prioritize what you need to do to get there. And then the last thing I would say is we have a danger of psychologically, just because of the way we're wired, if all we do is focus too much on the goal, and I've got to do it, I've got to get there no matter what, without giving ourselves grace to grow, to learn, to pivot, to be okay with making mistakes along the way because it's something we've never done before, then you can overwhelm yourself by that self-defeating talk in your head. So again, not over focusing, but having very clear direction. And again, giving yourself the grace to grow, to evolve, to get better, to accomplish.
Oh, I love that. And as I'm listening to you, it makes me think, if you don't have a goal, you're aimless, right? You may actually even lack a sense of purpose. You were calling it the GPS, right? What direction do I want to go into? So a goal gives you something to strive towards, but you also said it's so important that it's not the thing that you obsess over so much that it becomes out of reach and you feel defeated and now you're beating yourself up about not accomplishing that goal. I don't know who coined the phrase fail forward, right, and fail fast, but I think about it so often that it's okay to fail. As a matter of fact, probably the things we learn from the most is when we did something that we would consider a mistake. But as long as we're making progress towards that goal, we will experience a sense of accomplishment, right? And most of these mistakes we do aren't actually fail. If anything, we've now figured out a way that doesn't work and we can build upon that, right? But again, I feel like if we don't even put a goal out there and we don't even try, psychologically, I feel like we would live a very empty life.
Yeah. And if I could real quick, something just popped in my mind. The late, great Bob Proctor, one of the most well-known personal development professionals in the industry, passed away a few years ago.
Mm.
But he always used to define a goal as the continual pursuit of a worthy, meaningful ideal.
Oh, I
Right.
love it. Say that again.
So it's the continual pursuit of a worthy, meaningful ideal, right?
Oh,
Something that's in here,
yeah.
something that is meaningful to us, meaningful to the world. And it's
Mm.
that continual pursuit, right? Continual in and of itself implies that there will be hiccups, there will be roadblocks. But to piggyback on that, Tony Robbins, one of the things that he always says that I love, right? In our journey in life, and think about this, right? It's never a lack of resources that stops us. It's a lack of resourcefulness on our part. I mean, just look around us. I mean, there's everything we need is here to succeed, everything.
Yeah.
We just need to, again, discover our purpose, set the goal, and then utilize and leverage the resources we have at our disposal to make it happen.
Yeah. And realizing that, just because it feels uncomfortable, doesn't mean that it's necessarily wrong. It just probably means that it's outside of our current comfort zone. And rather than giving up or retreating or not pursuing that goal, realizing that, if we can press through the fear, we're actually going to enter into the learning zone where we can see the opportunity, where we can reimagine things that we couldn't have done before. And the good news is you don't ever have to do this all by yourself, right? Because
Yeah.
you could actually think that you're going crazy, but supporting yourself with or surrounding yourself with people who support your dream as opposed to people who will steal your dream is just as important in goal setting. I would love for you to maybe elaborate on that a little bit more.
Yeah. So again, I think one of the most difficult things for us, I know for me personally, was to find the right mentor. And again, this is such a cliche saying, but it's so true. But I wanted to find a mentor who would tell me, no kidding, what I needed to hear
Mm,
versus what they thought I wanted to hear.
mm,
Right. And sometimes it's that tough love, that reality check, right? Getting that advice and that guidance from someone who's already in a position or done similar things to where you want to be and what you want to do is just it's so invaluable. And having the right tools along the way, such as, you all have the ill way as a starting point, right?
yeah.
The income, lifestyle, wealth, and equity, right? How you want help people to figure out what that even looks like. There's the assessments, objective, subjective assessments, right?
Mm,
So when we put all that stuff together, having the mentor on the side then that can tell us, yeah, you know what? That's probably a good thing for you to aim, but have you thought about X, Y, and Z, right? Instead of just being strictly a cheerleader, Rich. We all need that. But when that's solely what we have,
mm.
right, then we could go off the cliff without even knowing how close we are.
Right. It's that delicate balance when to push someone out of their comfort zone, but not to the breaking point, right? Versus staying in your current comfort zone. Because one thing that I know for sure, if you stay in your current comfort zone, nothing is going to change. You will get what you've always had. And the whole idea of a goal is that pursuit of something bigger, something better, something that I haven't been able to capitalize or experience before. That is the whole goal of a goal, right? Once you really understand, not just the goal for the sake of replacing what you currently have, but something that's going to be in alignment with your values, something that's going to get you closer to that life that you've always wanted to create. And you're absolutely right. It doesn't mean that it's going to be a direct path. Just like, when you put the destination in your GPS, who knows? There may be a detour, but just because there's a detour doesn't mean you just say, okay, well, that's it. I guess I'm not going to get to my end destination. No, right? Life is messy a little bit, but when you have the proper guidance and when you have a clear vision, that North Star becomes the direction that you want to head. And then you're absolutely right. There are methodologies and also coaching that can provide that kind of clarity for you when it seems fuzzy and you're not really sure where you want to go. What I love about our journey of discovery, we've got so many resources, whether it's the book, whether it's this podcast, this is the very reason we're doing this, whether it's some of the assessments, those all allow you to do some incredible soul searching, to dig deeper than you've ever gone before, and to be able to use someone as a sounding board and get clarity on your thinking, hear yourself thinking out loud. As we wrap things up here, Dr. Mike, I would love for you to put a bow around just the importance of goals and the importance of not having to go at it all by yourself.
Yeah. So I think that the most important thing in goal setting, again, is it gives us clarity. And again, I'm talking like true goal setting. The example I always like to use, and again, I saw Bob Proctor do this live. He went to one member of the audience and said, "So, what is one of your goals that you really want to accomplish?" And the person in the audience said, "I would love to make more money."
Mm.
Cool, right? So Bob reached in his pocket, pulled out a penny, and gave him a penny. That's more money, right? So it was a lack of clarity and truth. What does more money mean? What does that look like? What's the amount? More importantly, how could it change your life? What would you do with that more money? Right. So again, when you have that deeper, more connected goals, it's really an emotional blueprint for your forward progress that will give you the power and the drive to go through, under, around, or over any obstacle that comes up, no matter how uncomfortable it may be. Again, having goals, the second thing I think, and this is more, just as important, if not more, is we talked about this early. Every little step that you take forward and every adversity that you go through and come out on the other side just uplifts you so much more. The self-confidence, the self-esteem, the sense of self-worth, sense of contribution, sense of value, right? All those intrinsic things just really start to come alive in you, and that just fuels the fire, right? And then the final thing is not being afraid to find a mentor or a coach or someone to at least have that initial discussion with, to start unpacking what it is you truly want and why you were even put on this earth.
Oh man, you're making me think about, whether my goals are big enough, audacious enough? Have I been thinking about it the right way? Are my goals, or what I think of my goals, really the ultimate goal? So thank you so much for really bringing us to that place where we can reimagine and reclaim the life of our dreams. And again, if you haven't done this already, I want you to go to careercompassshow.com and go ahead and take a brief assessment to help you determine whether you well on your way to have a career that aligns with your short-term income and lifestyle, as well as long-term wealth and equity goals. Thank you so much, Dr. Mike, as always.
Thank you very much. Great to see you again.
Likewise. If you enjoyed today's episode, please go to yourcareerrevolution.com and request your free guide to the benefits of working with a career ownership coach. Thank you so much for listening.